All right, so today we're going to talk about a new topic called absolute value. All right, and you are going to want to take notes on these things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is just a review on integers and what an integer is. It is a whole number. Okay, that means we don't have things like fractions or decimals or things like that. So our integers are our whole numbers, and they can be positive or negative. Okay, so go ahead and take a moment and write that down, what integers are.
And Miss Sayers,
Yes, sir.
when we did that ed puzzle, I think that was kind of easy for me because I was getting the positive and negatives.
Awesome. So that was a good way of doing it. Good, because we're going to use those counters today in this lesson too.
Okay.
Yeah.
You also have good handwriting on computer.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been practicing.
Yeah,
Just wait until I get my drawings going, because my drawings, are totally awesome too.
Mine will be sloppy if I write like that.
Okay, and so how does that relate to our absolute value? And when you see absolute value, you're going to see it with brackets. You're going to see those straight brackets like that. And then you'll see something on the inside. I'm just going to put an X for right now. But this is the symbol of an absolute value. So what is absolute value? Well, that is just asking the question, how far away is the number from 0 on the number line? Okay. I'm going to draw my little number line. We'll just do it short and sweet for right now.
Hey, Miss Sayers.
Uh-huh.
It was funny. You got positive to a negative and a negative to a positive.
I know, I was moving too fast. All right, so absolute value. How far away is the number from 0 on the number line? So here we just have a small little number line. And if I were to ask you, what is the absolute value of 2? I'm asking you, how far away is 2 from 0? So if we go ahead and just look at where 2 is, and we make a couple leaps, there's 1, 2. The absolute value of 2 is 2, meaning it's 2 hops away from 0 on the number line. Now I can ask the same question using a negative. So what's the absolute value of negative 2? Same question. How far away is negative 2 from 0 on the number line? So I find my negative 2. And how many hops does it take to get me to 0?
2.
1, 2. That means its absolute value is also 2.
A positive 2.
A positive 2, because I'm just asking, well, how many steps or hops or leaps or however you want to think about it, how many cheese chunks, how many spaces is it going to take me to get to 0 from that number? So not too difficult of a concept. Well, where it becomes complicated is because we start putting things into equations and expressions. We start asking you to do things with them. So before I do that, I want to show you, well, Miss Sayers, it looks like anytime we do absolute value, the answer is going to be positive. Well, for the most part, if we have our brackets and I say, well, what's the absolute value of -4? Well, how far away is -4 from 0 on the number line? Well, it's 4 spaces. Well, Miss Ayers, what's the absolute value of 100? Well, how many spaces is 100 from 0? Well, it's 100. Well, then we like to trick you. And maybe we'll put in a negative before the brackets. And we'll say, this guy says, what is the opposite of that? So just like we learned when we were doing integers, sometimes they'll throw that negative symbol in there a couple times and they want to know what is the opposite of that number. So if I put this in, I would say, well, what's the opposite of the absolute value of 13? Because it's my favorite number. Well, the absolute value, so this part of it is 13, but now I got to say, well, what's the opposite of a positive 13? It's a negative. 13. Yep, it's a negative 13. So I can ask that again, but this time I'll throw in a couple more of those symbols. And this is saying, well, what is the opposite
-7
of what's inside the absolute value brackets? Yes.
-7.
Okay, so our absolute value of -7 is a +7, but now it wants the opposite of that. So it's a -7.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where it starts to get a little more complicated. Let's see.
I'm the smartest one in this class.
All right, Sloan, now that we're recording, I know you like to run your mouth. Why don't we just mute ourselves? All right, so let's put this into our actual math problems, shall we? All right, so we're going to start off with and actually, we're going to put our parentheses around here. Why I put the parentheses around that -2 is because I don't want these two symbols right next to each other and you get confused about what that actually means. Okay, so what we do is we go ahead and just put our parentheses around it so that we separate that plus and minus. Just cleaning it up a little bit. So what does this say? It says the absolute value of 3 plus -2. So the absolute value of 3, or how far is 3 from 0 on the number line? Well, it's 3 hops plus our -2. So let's use some of our counters. So we're going to use 3 positives. 1, 2, 3. And I'm not going to go ahead and do the circles because that's going to take too much time. But to my 3 positives, I'm going to add 2 negatives. 1, 2. And what is it that I'm going to look for in order to eliminate some of the mess of the problem? So what's the thing that I got to look for now? What was that word? Yep, the 0 pairs. Yep, got to look for the 0 pairs.
There's 2.
Okay, so our positive and our negative go together to make 0. Our positive and our negative go together to make 0. Okay, and I'm left with 1 positive. So the answer to this is actually a positive 1.
See?
All right, so we got to take it slow. We got to take it slow and we got to find each piece of the puzzle and then put it all together. All right, let's try another one. So we're going to do 7 plus opposite, the absolute value of 2. Okay, so 7 plus the opposite of the absolute value of -2. So we're going to start with our absolute value part, okay? We're going to try to figure out what does that number end up being, okay? So the first part is, okay, I have absolute value of -2, or how far away is -2 from 0 on the number line? Well, it's 2. But then I need to look at this guy and say, well, I need the opposite of that. What's the opposite of a +2? It is a -2. Okay. And we can bring down the 7 because that's the beginning of the problem. And so now I'm going to do my counters. So I have 7 positives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to add to that 2 negative counters. 1, 2. I'm going to find my 0 pairs, the things that cancel each other out. There's 1, there's 2. And then I look at what I'm left with, and I'm left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positives, which means my answer is a +5. Okay, so let's try another one. We just get harder and harder as we go, because that's how I like to do it. All right. So I'll give you a moment to see if you can work this out. All right, so we'll look at the absolute value, and the absolute value of 3 is 3, but they want the opposite of that, which would be a -3. And I'm gonna bring down the rest of my problem, and it's -6 plus -3. Now this, pretty simple. I'm just adding all those negatives together. So 6 negatives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus 3 more, 7, 8, 9, which means my answer is a -9. I have no 0 pairs because I'm not adding anything positive in there. Let's see how you're doing. All right, good work, guys. Good work. All right, you ready for a challenge? Let's do some challenging ones. Okay. I have to come up with these and I don't really know, but okay, we're gonna do. Okay, that was a fun one. I like this one. I like this one. Okay, so again, when I have parentheses, it's not the same thing as the absolute value brackets. Parentheses is just keeping things a little more organized. So our plus sign and our minus sign are not right next to each other because it gets a little clumpy. So it's just a way to keep those things separated. Okay. So I'll give you a minute and see if you can go ahead and work this out.